GPT-1. This was the very beginning. OpenAI released it in 2018, and at the time, most people outside of research circles had no idea it existed. It was trained on a large amount of text from the internet and could generate coherent sentences, which sounds simple now, but was genuinely surprising at the time. It had 117 million parameters, which is a measure of how much a model can learn and retain. GPT-1 proved that a single model trained on raw text could handle multiple language tasks without being specifically built for each one. GPT-2. OpenAI released this in 2019, and the reaction was unusual. The model was considered so capable at generating realistic text that OpenAI initially refused to release the full version to the public, worried it could be used to spread misinformation at scale. That decision itself became a news story. GPT-2 had 1.5 billion parameters and could write paragraphs that felt surprisingly human. When it was eventually released in full, researchers and writers both took notice. It was the first version that felt like something the general public might actually care about. GPT-3. This is where everything shifted. Released in 2020, GPT-3 had 175 billion parameters and produced text so fluid and coherent that many people genuinely struggled to tell it apart from something written by a person. Developers started building tools on top of it almost immediately. It could write essays, answer questions, generate code, summarize documents, and carry on conversations. Access was limited through an API, so most people experienced it through third-party apps rather than directly. GPT-3 was the model that made the broader tech world realize language AI had crossed a meaningful threshold. GPT 3.5. This version came out of a process called reinforcement learning from human feedback, where human trainers rated responses and helped shape how the model behaved. The result was a model that felt more helpful, more focused, and less likely to go off in strange directions. It was also the engine behind the original ChatGPT when it launched in November 2022. That launch changed everything. Within 5 days, over 1 million people had signed up. Within 2 months, it had reached 100 million users, making it the fastest-growing consumer application in history at that point. GPT 3.5 was the version that introduced most of the world to conversational AI. GPT-4. OpenAI released this in March 2023, and the improvement was noticeable immediately. It handled complex reasoning better, made fewer factual errors, and could understand much longer pieces of text in a single conversation. It also introduced the ability to read and interpret images, not just text. A user could upload a photograph or a diagram and ask questions about it. GPT-4 became the foundation for the paid tier of ChatGPT and was adopted quickly by businesses, developers, and professionals who needed more reliability than GPT 3.5 could offer. GPT-4 Turbo. This was a refined version of GPT-4, introduced later in 2023. The main changes were practical ones. It had a much larger context window, meaning it could hold more information in a single conversation without forgetting earlier parts. It was also faster and cheaper to run through the API, which mattered a great deal for developers building products on top of it. The knowledge cutoff was pushed forward as well, giving it more recent information to draw from. GPT-4 Turbo was less of a leap and more of a tightening, making an already strong model more usable at scale. GPT-4o. The O stands for Omni. Released in 2024, this version was built to handle text, audio, and images together in a more unified way than before. Previous versions processed different types of input through separate systems, which introduced delays and limitations. GPT-4o brought them closer together, allowing for faster and more natural back-and-forth conversations. The voice interaction in particular felt noticeably more responsive and natural. It was made available to free users as well, which meant the gap between the paid and free versions of ChatGPT narrowed significantly. GPT-4o Mini. This came alongside the full GPT-4o as a lighter, faster, and more affordable version. It was designed for tasks that do not require the full power of the larger model, things like quick summaries, simple questions, or high-volume applications where speed matters more than depth. For many everyday uses, the quality difference was hard to notice. It replaced GPT 3.5 as the default for free users in many contexts, offering noticeably better performance without added cost. GPT-o1. This model was built around a different approach to reasoning. Rather than generating a response immediately, it was trained to work through problems step by step before producing an answer, spending more time thinking before it speaks. This made it significantly better at math, logic, and scientific reasoning compared to previous versions. It was slower by design, and that trade-off was intentional. For straightforward conversations, it was not always the right tool. But for complex problems that required careful thinking, it outperformed what had come before it in meaningful ways. GPT-o3. Released in 2025, this version pushed the reasoning capabilities even further. It scored at exceptionally high levels on benchmarks designed to test advanced mathematics, coding, and scientific problem-solving, in some cases reaching or surpassing the performance of professional experts in those fields. It was not positioned as a general chat tool, but as something closer to a research and problem-solving engine. The cost and computational demands were higher, but for the tasks it was built for, it represented one of the most capable systems OpenAI had released to that point.